Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Street Fighter V BLANKA figure. And that's not Street Fighter V BLANKA. I mean, it's just not. That's not what he looks like in the game. So, I don't know. It's weird. It actually isn't what he looks like in any game. There's no combination of colors that actually matches this one. The skin's too green for those tan shorts. The hair's a nice orange for mostly the standard BLANKA, but the skin's not quite the right color. It should be more yellow, or it should be significantly more green if you want it to be a particular version. And the shorts should be browner for like a P1. It's a weird combination, but there's some stuff on this figure that's really exceptionally well done. A few things. Then there's like 2 or 3 things that are pretty terribly done. So it's kind of an interesting release, which is kind of indicative of this Street Fighter line. They've done some figures that are great, and then others that have been pretty bad. So this is interesting. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands to the top of his hair about 17.5 centimeters, which makes him just about 6 3/4 inches, pretty close. You're probably never going to have him standing straight up like this, but that way you at least have an idea. And I'll do a quick comparison for you. There's BLANKA and there's Ryu. So he's not actually that much taller. He is significantly thicker, and that's good for the most part. They made his hips really wide. Like, he's got birthing hips. They're really, really, really big. So, I mean, I know he's got shorts on, but also his hips and his waist. It's just really wide. Like, his waist is wider than his pecs. So it definitely looks a little bit weird in a more neutral pose. Once you pose him, it's going to be a whole lot less noticeable because his arms will be blocking a lot of that, but it is worth mentioning that his hips are wide and his chest is very narrow. Very narrow. Here's the good thing though, the actual anatomy sculpting on this guy is pretty phenomenal. It's great. It's very organic looking. We'll get to the issues that come with the articulation in the articulation section, but aesthetically there is one issue, and that is this giant gap up here in the shoulders, which is again a part of the articulation. So we'll get to that specifically later, but that is definitely a downside. But the anatomy itself, very, very nicely done. Very good musculature, good sculpting for sure. I like it. I like it a whole bunch. Again, the shorts are kind of out of place, both in color and in sculpt. There's texturing throughout his skin, which is awesome, but then his shorts are completely smooth. So I'm not sure why. It looks like it's not finished. It's very strange in that respect. The hair sculpting is okay on the chest and arms and legs. It's okay on the head as well. Maybe a little bit less than many people would have expected. You know, he's got kind of a lot of hair, and that's not a ton, especially out to the side. It's almost like Super Saiyan 3 hair. So it's not quite like a traditional BLANKA. It's some kind of weird amalgamation that doesn't quite hit any of the source material. So it's a little strange, but overall, aesthetically speaking, it's pretty good. A lot of people have been complaining about his face, that it's not very accurate. It's okay. I think really the only issue is the little beady eyes. I think if the eyes were not so far apart, it would be significantly better looking, and maybe if they were just slightly bigger. Now, I know human eyes are generally smaller than most people think they are when it comes to actual anatomy, but it's just kind of weird looking. He's kind of weaselly looking. Not a lot, but a little. Either way, I'd say for the aesthetic overall, I want to give it like an 8.5, but then the shorts stand out so weirdly that I'm going to knock it down to a 7. I like a lot of it so much, but those shorts are really, really weird. Okay, on to the accessories. We have 2 different faces. We have the neutral face that comes on him in the package. Then we have the yelling face, which his eyes are even farther apart. And they're blue on the yelling face. And on the regular face, they are still kind of blue, but more black. It's a little bit weird. Then we have some hands. We have the 2 kind of grapply open hands that come on him in the package. Then we have 2 fist hands. And then we have his electrocuted opponent acrylic type things, which are just transparent plastic with some printouts on them. They actually look really cool. I like those. They might even be directly from the game, maybe with some modification, but those are cool, and they have a little stand to hold one of them up at a time. Those are nice. And then lastly, we have these guys. We have these cardboard backgrounds again. And hey, at least this time they didn't smash the crap out of them. They've been doing that a lot lately. But here's another interesting thing. It's the Street Fighter V background, which is what the package says, but then BLANKA is not Street Fighter V BLANKA. So, I don't know. They're here. I don't know if anybody really cares about these, but they're included, so you get those. So accessory-wise, it's good enough, I think. It's got a lot fewer accessories than the soda one, which came out forever ago and cost only $15. So I don't know, 6 out of 10. They're acceptable, but nothing great. Okay, moving on to the articulation, and this is where this figure does some really great stuff and some really terrible stuff. It's weird. Okay, so starting with the hair, we have a ball peg for the hair, which is okay, except it doesn't really do much. It's basically just gonna help you pose the head a little bit. It allows the hair to move some. That's it. But the problem is, as you're posing the head, you're gonna often have this happen, where the hair pops off. It doesn't snap in particularly well. It's not necessarily gonna be a problem, but it is a little bit of an issue sometimes, if you're not careful. They don't fit, the pegs don't fit very well. Then the head is on a little tiny ball peg on top of another ball peg, so it moves around okay, but when you're talking about articulation, the bigger the ball peg, the better. And that ball peg is essentially not a ball peg, it's almost a straight peg. It is very, very tiny. So you have almost no play on top of this peg. This one does move around, the bottom one. As you can see, the bigger the ball peg, the more range you get. So that's nice. And then the neck is on a ball peg as well. So you won't have too much of an issue. It just could have been significantly better if they balanced out, there goes the hair again, if they balanced out those ball pegs a little bit. But it'll work. The head moves around well enough. I'll give them that. It is nicer than a ball hinge. That's for sure. I like that. Okay, now for the shoulders, which is, oh my god, somebody needs to get fired. What the hell? Who designed these shoulders? They are atrocious. But first, the butterfly joint is actually quite nice. See how it sticks out and doesn't make any big gaps? Works very nicely. Doesn't actually afford that much extra range, but at least it's there and it looks nice. It does afford some range, so that's cool. But the shoulders, holy crap. Look how big the shoulder itself is and then how little the ball hinge is in comparison. You have to tuck the arm in order for that to work, which means you have this giant cavity. They did this for Akuma, only not even as bad as this, and it was terrible then, and it's even worse now. This is by far, without a doubt, objectively, 100% verifiably, the worst way to make a highly articulated shoulder. Look at Broly. Broly's arms are even bigger than this, and his don't have this, and his work just fine. Why can't they do that? Why does the Street Fighter line have to have this terrible, terrible design? You have a ball peg, and then you have a ball hinge, which is what you would have normally, except the ball hinge is just so small you can't move the arm around. You can only tuck it in like that and you get gapping out the ass. It's just terrible. Oh god, it's so bad. You can't bring the arm out to the side at all because it doesn't tuck in that way. It only tucks in at the top. It's so bad. And the only reason that they would do this is to maintain the sculpt on the outside, which is fine, but it doesn't do any good to have a good sculpt if you can't pose the arms. Plus, the way they did it, I mean, it works anatomically, the way the bicep tucks in down here and the shoulders out here, but it doesn't work for the figure at all, because now his arms look like they're bent, and you can't pose them, so that really sucks. You have a single jointed elbow that goes about 90 degrees, and it does have a swivel if you want that. Then you have ball hinge wrists, which are standard and fine. Diaphragm joint is a ball peg, then there's another ball peg at the lower torso. They move around really nicely. Really, no problems. I mean, obviously there's some limitation, but it's pretty good, especially for leaning forward, which is what BLANKA does. That's pretty good. I'll take that. Waist twist at the bottom works well enough, at the top works well enough. He's not going to be in any crazy poses, but it's okay. For the hips, we have our hinged ball pegs, which is fine. You can raise the legs up basically horizontal, so that's good. They do go back a little bit if you drop them down. Here's the problem. They can't go out to the side really at all. And it's not a matter of physical limitation. Well, I mean, it is, but here's what causes the problem. If I can get it off without breaking it. Fingers crossed, don't break, don't break, don't break. Oh, it's not coming off. Anyway, I can probably show you from here. That ball peg, you can see the ball is about the same size as the peg. And that's the problem. You need a bigger ball peg. The ball itself isn't affording any range. That's why it's doing that. So you can't move the legs out to the side really at all because of that ball peg. That's the problem. You do get a ball peg for the thigh swivel, so you can move the leg out a little bit like that if you needed to for some reason. I don't know why you would. But the legs do pose well other than going out to the side. But silly little things like having a really tiny ball peg at the end of the stick just doesn't make sense. Companies like this should know better by now. Double jointed knees work well enough, a little bit better than 90. They look okay. And then here's another thing that's really, really good. I really like these ankles. Even though they're ugly when you're looking at them like this, the ankle things hide them mostly. So you have a hinge that brings the foot down and it lets it go forward really far. Really great range. That's fantastic. And then, wait for it, you have an actual ankle rocker, a hinge that's meant just for that. And it is glorious. And it's not really a hinge, it's just a swivel like Marvel Legends, but it's just employed properly. Look at that. That is awesome. I love that. I love that a lot. Yes, it's ugly, but that thing will hide it, so that's fine. Then we have a toe hinge, which is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. So, terrible design for the shoulders, problematic hips. Lots of the rest of it is actually pretty solid. So, articulation-wise on this guy, 7 out of 10. It could have been way higher if they didn't... I can't believe that this shoulder design is acceptable. It's such a terrible design. Mind-boggling. And I don't get it. I don't get it. So final verdict on this guy. It's a weird release. It's not quite any particular version of BLANKA, and it's really good in some ways, and then really bad in some ways. So it's a very, very strange release. I think I like it personally. I have to try to decide if that's being objective or not, because I don't know. Like, it is objectively really good in some ways, for sure, without a doubt. But also objectively really bad in some ways, for sure, without a doubt. So I'm trying to make sure I separate my personal liking for the thing with my objective output. And I think objectively, it's a 7. Final verdict is 7. Subjectively, despite the flaws, I like it a lot. I enjoy this figure quite a bit. He's meaty. In some poses, he looks fantastic. So subjectively, I didn't give him like a 9, but objectively, it has too many flaws. It's more of a 7. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know we went a little bit longer here, but there was some stuff to talk about. So hopefully you appreciate that. And if you made it this far, that makes me happy. So go ahead and give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and if you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down, and you should probably subscribe because I do have thousands of videos on the channel, just waiting for you to click on them and watch them, and then I have new videos coming out just about every single day, so make sure you come back for that, and in the meantime, keep collecting.